The universe was vast, endless, filled with civilizations so old and powerful that stars themselves seemed like mere flickers in their wake. Among these ancient powers stood the Galactic Council, an alliance of the most advanced species across countless systems. They were the keepers of order, the arbiters of peace, the rulers of rules. When they spoke, entire planets listened. When they warned, empires trembled. Their laws shaped the galaxy's destiny. But there was one species they never quite understood. One species they underestimated. One species that, in their pride, they thought they could contain, control, or ignore. Humans. From the very moment humanity reached beyond the confines of Earth, the Council's unease grew. Not because humans were technologically superior, far from it. Their starships were crude compared to the sleek vessels of the Council's chosen. Their weapons, primitive. Their cultures, chaotic and unpredictable. What unsettled the Council was something deeper. Something raw and dangerous. The fire of human will, the chaos of human emotion, and the fierce stubbornness to survive and fight, no matter the odds. Humans break all the rules, whispered a Council envoy during one secret meeting, eyes narrowed in disbelief. They do not respect our traditions, our treaties, or our authority. The Council's warnings were clear. They advised restraint, caution, even exile. Do not provoke them, they said. Let them grow but watch closely. But the galaxy, in its complacency, ignored those warnings. Many species saw humans as a curiosity, a brief flare in the cosmic night that would burn out quickly. After all, humans had no great fleets, no psychic powers, no centuries of experience. They were wrong. This story begins on the edge of a forgotten star system, where a small human exploration vessel drifted silently, its hull scarred from battle but its crew unyielding. Captain Lara stood at the viewport, watching distant stars flicker like pinpricks of light. Her hands clenched tightly on the railing. There was no fear, only determination. Her ship, the Endurance, had seen more than its share of conflict, yet she and her crew pressed on. Captain, her first officer said quietly, breaking the silence. We've detected an incoming transmission. It's from the Galactic Council. The room grew cold. No human had ever received direct communication from the Council before. It was a message laced with threats and demands. Cease all expansion, abandon all colonized worlds, submit to their oversight. Lara's eyes flashed with something fierce. They don't understand us, she said, voice low but resolute. They think they can scare us into submission. They're about to learn the truth. The crew exchanged nervous glances, but none dared question her. Humans had always been the underdogs, but they never backed down. Far beyond the Endurance, in the Council's towering chamber of gleaming crystal and cold metal, the alien leaders debated furiously. One by one they recalled the warnings ignored, the skirmishes that had already begun, and the defiance that humans had shown. They broke the sacred codes, the elder counselor hissed. They challenged our authority openly. But we underestimated their resilience, another replied. Their unpredictability is their greatest weapon. We allowed them to grow, and now we face the consequences. The tension was palpable. The Council faced a threat unlike any before. Humanity was no longer a curiosity, it was a reckoning. Back on the Endurance, Lara paced the command deck, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by enemies who expected them to crumble. But she carried a fire inside, a spark passed down through generations of people who had survived famine, war, and extinction threats. We don't just fight for survival, she told her crew. We fight because we refuse to be controlled. We fight because our spirit cannot be broken. We fight because the galaxy will learn what it means to face humanity. Her words were met with nods, clenched fists, and a silence filled with raw emotion. In the distance, warships from alien coalitions began to gather. Their weapons were vast, their numbers overwhelming. The message was clear, the Council had declared war. But humans were not so easily defeated. Across planets and colonies, broadcasts crackled with news of battles erupting without warning. Small groups of human fighters striking with cunning and ferocity, defying expectations, turning defeat into victory by sheer will. Some in the galaxy called it madness. Others called it bravery. To the humans it was simply survival. The Galactic Council, confident in its centuries of control, now faced a species that refused to follow the rules. A species that shattered the illusions of order with chaotic brilliance. A species whose greatest weapon was not technology or power, but the relentless spirit to fight, to break every rule if needed. The Council chambers buzzed with panic. They cannot be stopped, one alien leader admitted, voice trembling. They've become something different. But what did this transformation mean for the galaxy? Would the humans bring salvation, destruction, or something no one had predicted? Captain Lara looked out over the stars, her thoughts heavy with doubt and hope. She knew the war ahead would demand sacrifices no one was ready for. She wondered if the galaxy would ever understand what it truly meant to be human, to break the rules not out of spite but out of necessity. Then, without warning, the Endurance's alarms blared. Incoming ships, unknown, fast and heavily armed, were closing in. Lara's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with the fire of defiance. Prepare for battle. This is only the beginning. The fate of humanity and the galaxy hung in the balance. The Endurance's crew moved with practiced precision, the hum of activity rising around Captain Lara. The incoming ships weren't just any patrol vessels. They were sleek, dark, and silent, ghosts of the Galactic Council's elite fleet. The kind of ships reserved for swift, decisive strikes. No warnings. No negotiations. Just raw power sent to remind humanity of their place. But Lara had never been one to believe in place. She watched the flickering blips on the tactical display, feeling a mixture of adrenaline and cold determination. Every pulse, every movement of those ships told a story. The Council had made their choice. They would not tolerate human expansion or independence. They intended to crush it. Her first officer, a sharp-minded woman with a calm voice, approached her. "Captain, weapons are charged and shields at maximum. We can't outgun them, but we have agility and experience." Lara nodded. "Good. Let's remind them that survival isn't just about firepower. It's about heart." The crew exchanged looks, fierce, unspoken solidarity. It wasn't just a battle of ships. It was a battle of wills. The Council's message had been clear: submit or be destroyed. But humans never submitted. Years ago, long before the war, humanity's rise had been slow and unsteady. They were seen as a primitive species, clumsy in space travel and diplomacy. Colonies dotted nearby systems, mostly small mining outposts or research stations. Few took notice. But humans had something no one else did: a relentless hunger to explore, to grow, to claim a place in the stars. Their old Earth struggles, poverty, war, climate disasters, had forged a spirit that refused to break. Each new world was not just a colony, it was a symbol of hope, defiance, and survival. As humanity pushed further, the Galactic Council grew uneasy. Their envoys arrived with quiet warnings and veiled threats. They demanded humans stop expanding, to stay within agreed boundaries. But humans saw the galaxy differently, not as a place to be divided and controlled, but as a vast frontier to be shared and fought for. On the bridge, Lara's mind drifted to those early days, when her parents had been part of the first wave of settlers on Mars. When humanity had first faced alien life, sometimes friendly, often hostile. The losses, the sacrifices, it had all shaped the people she led now. Her thoughts were interrupted by the communications officer. "Captain, we're receiving a coded transmission from an unknown source. It's encrypted, but the signature matches something ancient. It's a warning." Lara's brow furrowed. "From who?" "Unknown," the officer replied. "But the content is clear. It's a message to stay away from the outer rim. It talks about a force beyond the Council's reach. Something that predates them all." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. The outer rim had always been a mysterious part of the galaxy. Few dared venture there. Rumors spoke of lost civilizations, weapons so powerful they could level planets, and a darkness that swallowed entire fleets. Could this be why the Council is so desperate to stop us? Lara wondered aloud. Are we getting too close to something they fear? The first officer stepped forward. "If that's true, then we're not just fighting the Council anymore. We might be caught between ancient powers and politics." The tension thickened. Lara knew the truth. This war wasn't just about territory or resources. It was about control of something far greater. Something the Council had hidden for centuries. Her thoughts raced back to the Council chamber scenes she had seen in intercepted transmissions. The leaders weren't just angry, they were terrified. Fear was an emotion alien to most species at the Council. Yet here it was, twisting their faces into expressions of desperation. Lara turned to her crew. "We need to prepare for more than just a fleet attack. We need to be ready for anything." The ship's engines roared as the Endurance slipped into evasive maneuvers. Alien warships surrounded them, forming a deadly net. Yet the humans moved with unmatched speed and coordination. Small bursts of plasma, clever use of nebula cover, and daring close-range strikes kept the enemy off balance. Still, the Endurance wasn't invincible. Hull integrity warnings blinked across the panels. A sharp explosion rocked the ship, sending a shudder through the decks. A young technician cried out in pain. Lara's heart clenched. "We won't give up," she said, voice steady but fierce. "Not now. Not ever." Across the galaxy, news of the conflict spread. On distant human colonies, families listened to crackling broadcasts filled with urgency and hope. Children clutched makeshift weapons. Workers abandoned tools to join militias. The war wasn't just in space, it was in every human heart. Among the Council's ranks, not all agreed with the harsh measures. Some diplomats feared that crushing humanity would only unleash chaos. One council member, a quiet thinker, warned that humans were changing. "They are no longer just a species," he said. "They are a force shaped by conflict, survival, and something we don't understand. Trying to control them will only make them stronger." But those voices were drowned by the cries for war. The Council had built their empire on control and tradition. Humans were the first species to truly break the rules. Back on the Endurance, Lara met with her senior officers in the war room. Holographic maps displayed the fleet positions, star systems, and unknown signals from the outer rim. The mystery weighed heavily on everyone. "We need allies," Lara said quietly. "There are species out there who fear the Council as much as we do. We can't fight this alone." A tactical officer shook his head. "Most species are too afraid or too loyal. The Council controls trade, communication, and even intelligence. Making contact will be dangerous." "But not impossible," Lara replied. "We'll send out encrypted calls. If even one answers, it could change everything." As the meeting ended, Lara stood alone, staring at the star map. The galaxy felt like a cage, but it was also a battlefield of wills, where the humans refused to be prisoners. She thought about the price they had already paid: lost friends, destroyed colonies, shattered dreams. Yet the fire inside humanity burned brighter than ever. It was not just about fighting. It was about proving that no matter how ancient or powerful the enemy, human spirit could never be extinguished. Suddenly the Endurance shuddered again, this time violently. A hidden mine detonated near the hull, shaking the entire ship. Power flickered. Systems failed. The bridge plunged into darkness for a moment. The crew scrambled, but a grim silence fell over the room. Lara's voice cut through the tension. "Damage report. Life support is holding, but the engines are at 60%, came the reply. "We've lost our primary shield generators." That meant the ship was vulnerable, an easy target. Lara's jaw tightened. The Council's fleet was closing in, ready to strike the final blow. But she refused to surrender. A sudden message flashed on the screen. It was the mysterious outer rim signal again, but this time clearer. A distorted voice spoke words in an ancient language, then switched to a human dialect. "Beware the shadow beyond the Council's reach. Humanity's path is written in fire." The room fell silent. The crew stared at the screen, questions burning in their eyes. "What does it mean?" someone whispered. Lara swallowed hard. "It means this war is bigger than us. The Council isn't just trying to stop humans, they're hiding something deadly." The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. Right now the Endurance and its crew had to survive. They had to keep fighting, keep breaking the rules, keep standing against an empire that wanted to erase them. Outside, the stars shimmered cold and indifferent. But inside every human heart aboard the ship, a fierce fire blazed. A fire no council, no ancient power, no shadow could ever put out. Lara glanced at her crew, each face marked by exhaustion, fear, and defiance. She felt a surge of pride. These were not just soldiers. They were the embodiment of humanity's unbreakable will. The next battle was coming. The stakes were higher than ever. And the galaxy was about to learn that when humans break the rules, the consequences are unlike anything anyone could imagine. The Endurance floated in the cold void, its damaged hull barely holding together as alarms echoed through the corridors. The Council's fleet was tightening the noose, moving with calculated precision like predators closing in on their prey. Every system on the ship strained to function, and every member of the crew felt the weight of what was to come. There was no turning back now. Captain Lara stood before the viewport again, the stars stretched out endlessly beyond the shattered blackness of space. Her breath was steady but her mind raced. They had escaped countless dangers, but this was different. The enemy was relentless, their power overwhelming. The Council's hatred for humanity had grown into something dark, something personal. Her thoughts flicked back to the mysterious transmission from the outer rim. The voice warning of shadows beyond the Council's reach had unsettled her deeply. What was out there that even the Galactic Council feared? It was a secret so terrifying it could change everything. "Captain," her first officer's voice pulled her back to the present. We've received a response to our call for allies. It's faint, but it's there. Hope sparked for a moment before it was crushed by the cold reality. The signal was from a distant system, one known to be home to outcasts and rebels, species who had long resented the Council's rule but remained cautious of humans. We have to try, Lara said. If even one of them stands with us, it could turn the tide. As they prepared the message, the ship shuddered violently again. The shields flickered and failed, leaving them exposed to the Council's deadly weapons. Explosions rocked the Endurance and the hull groaned under the assault. Crew members were thrown to the ground, pain and fear mixing in the chaos. Lara's voice was firm and unwavering. Hold your positions. We fight for every breath. Below decks, in the cramped living quarters, the younger crew members huddled together. Some clung to memories of home, others whispered prayers they weren't sure they believed in. The weight of the war pressed heavily on their shoulders. They were fighting not just for survival but for the very right to exist. The communications officer returned with grim news. The Allies' response is cautious. They fear the Council's reach but they're willing to meet, if we can survive long enough to arrange it. Lara's heart sank. Time was slipping away. Outside, the enemy fleet unleashed a barrage of fire, tearing through space with brutal efficiency. The Endurance's weapons fired back in desperate bursts, each shot a testament to human resilience. The ship's engineer approached Lara, sweat dripping down his face. Captain, the engines are failing. We might not outrun them much longer. Her hands clenched. Then we don't run. We fight. Suddenly, the ship's sensors picked up an anomaly, a massive shadow moving just beyond the edge of sensor range. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen. No ship. No known weapon. Something ancient. Something alive. The crew gasped, the tension in the room thickening. Lara's voice was barely a whisper. This is what the message warned us about. Panic threatened to rise, but she forced herself to stay calm. This unknown threat could be their doom, or their salvation. But it was a wild card that neither side had accounted for. The Council's fleet halted momentarily, sensing the same disturbance. Their commanders exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, fear crept into their eyes. Lara knew the coming battle was more than a fight for territory. It was a fight for the future of humanity, and possibly the entire galaxy. As the shadow loomed closer, the Endurance's crew braced for what was to come. The war had become a struggle not just against the Council, but against forces far beyond their understanding. Every heartbeat, every breath, every action would decide the fate of billions. And humanity's greatest test was about to begin. The shadow that hovered at the edge of the sensor grid wasn't just some unknown vessel or weapon. It moved with purpose, a slow and deliberate approach that chilled every soul aboard the Endurance. The hum of the ship's system seemed to fade beneath the rising tension. Captain Lara stared at the screen, her eyes wide but unflinching. Then, without warning, the shadow split apart, fragments pulling away to reveal multiple smaller ships, unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Sleek and organic, almost alive, they pulsed with a strange energy that made the air in the room feel heavy. The sensors couldn't classify them. They were not Council ships, not human and not any known ally. The crew gasped. Whispers rippled through the command deck. What are they?" a young officer asked, voice trembling. Lara's jaw tightened. "We don't know. But whatever they are, they're here because of us." The mysterious fleet opened communications. No words came through, only a series of tones, complex, almost musical. Then a voice echoed in perfect human language, calm but authoritative. "Humans have broken the rules of this galaxy. You have awakened forces beyond your comprehension." The message sent a shiver through the crew. This was no simple warning. It was a declaration. Lara met the voice with steady defiance. "We're here because we fight for survival. We won't back down to anyone." The response was cold, almost sorrowful. "Survival has a cost. Your defiance endangers all. The Galactic Council has kept balance for millennia, but you have upset that balance. We are the Guardians, ancient watchers of this peace." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Guardians? Ancient watchers? The myths of the Outer Rim suddenly became terrifyingly real. Before Lara could respond, the Guardians' ships surged forward, cutting through the Council's fleet like a blade through silk. The alien warships faltered, caught between two unknown enemies. The Council leaders, seeing their forces overwhelmed, turned their wrath on the Endurance even harder. It became clear, they would rather see humanity destroyed than lose control to these new, unknown powers. The battle had shifted. It was no longer humans versus the Council. It was survival against impossible odds. against both old empires and ancient forces awakened by humanity's rise. Lara's heart pounded as she gave orders to her crew, adrenaline surging through every vein. This is humanity unleashed. We fight not just for ourselves but for the freedom to exist, to grow, to break every chain. The Endurance weaved through firestorms, shields flickering, engines screaming. Every maneuver was a gamble, every decision a choice between life and death. The Guardian's voice returned, colder this time. The choice is yours. Cease your expansion or face extinction. Lara's voice cut through the tension, fierce and unyielding. We choose to fight. Because humans do not fear the unknown. We embrace it. Around her, the crew nodded, eyes shining with unbreakable resolve. The galaxy watched. The Council regretted their warnings ignored. The Guardians reconsidered their ancient roles. And humanity stood at the edge of annihilation or ascendance. The true war was just beginning. The battle raged on like a storm tearing through the void. The Endurance was battered, barely holding together, but the crew fought with a desperation born of knowing this might be their last stand. Captain Lara's voice was steady, commanding through the chaos, but inside, her heart pounded with a mix of fear and hope. This was the moment that would decide everything. The Guardian ships moved with deadly grace, pushing the Council's fleet back, their strange energy cutting through shields and armor as if they were nothing. The Council forces, once so confident, now scrambled in retreat, desperate to regroup, but the Guardians showed no mercy. Lara realized then that the true enemy was not just the Council. It was the fragile balance of power the Guardians had sworn to protect. Humanity had shattered that balance by daring to grow, to break the rules that had bound the galaxy for centuries. The Endurance surged forward, weapons blazing, weaving through debris and fire. Lara locked eyes with her crew, each face etched with exhaustion but burning with determination. We are not just survivors, she shouted. We are the storm that changes everything. Humanity unleashed. A fierce pulse of energy erupted from the Guardian's flagship, a beam of pure power aimed directly at the Endurance. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring as systems failed one by one. We can't hold much longer, the engineer cried, sweat streaking his dirt-smudged face. Lara's hands clenched the railing. Hold on. We fight until the end. Suddenly, the ship's sensors detected an anomaly, something massive and hidden within the wreckage of a nearby destroyed planet. It was a dormant weapon, ancient and forgotten, buried beneath layers of rock and ice. A daring idea sparked in Lara's mind. If we can activate that weapon, it might be our only chance to turn this tide. The crew hesitated, knowing the risks. Activating an ancient weapon without knowing its full power could mean destruction or salvation. With no other choice, Lara ordered the Endurance toward the planet's surface, dodging the Guardians' relentless attacks. Inside the planet's core, the ship's landing was rough but successful. The crew rushed to activate the weapon's control systems, deciphering ancient codes and interfaces long forgotten. As the weapon powered up, the Guardians' ships began to descend, sensing the threat. The Endurance launched a final desperate assault from the planet's surface. The weapon unleashed a wave of energy that tore through space, disabling the Council's fleet and forcing the Guardians into retreat. Victory seemed within reach. Humanity had broken the rules and survived. But as the energy pulse faded, a deeper, darker secret revealed itself. The weapon was not just a tool of destruction, it was a beacon. A signal burst into the galaxy, a call sent across light years. And from the shadows beyond known space, something ancient and far more terrifying than the Council or the Guardians began to stir. Lara's voice was barely audible through the comms. We may have won the battle, but the war is far from over. The screen went dark. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had unleashed more than it had bargained for. The Endurance rested quietly on the shattered surface of the ancient planet, its hull scarred and battered but still alive. Inside, the crew moved with exhaustion heavy in their bones, yet their eyes held something fierce, a mixture of relief, sorrow, and unyielding resolve. Captain Lara sat in the command chair, her hands trembling as the weight of what they had unleashed settled around her. They had won the battle. The Council's fleet lay crippled, scattered like dust in the wake of humanity's bold strike. The Guardians, once untouchable sentinels of balance, had withdrawn to the shadows, forced to reconsider their role. Humanity had broken the rules and changed the course of the galaxy forever. But the weapon's signal, that haunting beacon, had not gone unnoticed. It had awakened something old and powerful, a force lurking beyond the edges of known space, stirring with intent and hunger. This realization pressed down on Lara's heart, heavy and unrelenting. The crew gathered in the dimly lit war room, voices low as they debated their next move. The youngest among them, a technician barely out of training, spoke up with a tremor in his voice. "Captain, what do we do now? We've defied the greatest powers and survived, but what about what's coming?" Lara looked around the room, eyes locking with each face, some scared, some angry, all weary. She took a deep breath. "We keep moving forward. We learn, we adapt, and we protect what makes us human. Our spirit, our will, and our refusal to be controlled." Her words settled over them like a shield. The galactic landscape had shifted. The Council was fractured, weakened but far from defeated. The Guardians had retreated, their ancient neutrality broken. And beyond the veil of stars, the unknown force awakened by the beacon awaited. Humanity was no longer a mere species. It was a symbol of defiance, resilience, and change. They had dared to break the rules, and the galaxy would never be the same. Back on Earth, broadcasts told the story of the endurance-s courage, of humans standing tall against impossible odds. Families watched with pride and tears, knowing their loved ones were part of a greater destiny. Yet, Lara understood that victory was just the beginning. The war they had started was bigger than any one fleet or empire. It was a test of what it truly meant to be human in a universe that feared their fire. As repairs began on the Endurance, Lara reached out through encrypted channels to those scattered human colonies, to potential allies and even to former enemies. "We must unite," she said. "Not just to survive but to thrive. To build a future where no one controls us." Her message echoed across the stars, carrying the hope of a new era. But the final twist came not from enemies or ancient forces. It came from within. A transmission was intercepted, not from any known source, but from deep within the Endurance's own systems. A hidden program buried in the ship's original code began to activate. It was a safeguard left by the first humans who dared to venture into space, a reminder that humanity's true strength lay not just in weapons or ships, but in adaptability and unity. The program's message was simple yet profound: humanity must never forget its origins. We break the rules because we must, but we also build new rules, rules born from hope, courage, and the will to protect. Lara smiled faintly, tears stinging her eyes. This is who we are. The galaxy would remember this day, not as a moment of destruction, but as the dawn of something greater. Humanity unleashed was no longer a warning, it was a promise. And no matter what the stars held beyond, the fire within would burn bright forever. In a galaxy bound by rules, humanity chose to break them, not out of defiance alone, but to ignite a future no one dared to imagine.